Okay, cool. So welcome everybody. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the community engagement panel organized and hosted by the International Dark Sky Association as part of the Under One Sky Global Conference. I'm delighted to be the chair of this panel. We have some amazing speakers and attendees. First of all, thank you very much for being with us. This topic is very dear to my heart. The community engagement and outreach is a very, very crucial part of Dark Skies movement. Let's remind ourselves that it started with small communities coming together to do something about their circumstances, environment, and therefore every community is different. Their strengths are different. The way that deal with their weaknesses is different because their values are different. But before we delve into that, we have some housekeeping rules to remind everybody. Please mute yourselves if you're not speaking. This is recorded. Last thing you want is if you're sneezing or coughing, you get caught by the video and it will be immortalized on online video somewhere. So also we have some closed captioning and also automatic translations with subtitles if you guys are interested. So we won't have direct questions. The questions will go into the chat box, and then the most prominent ones will be, if hopefully we have the time, will be fed to the speakers. And I also need to remind you guys about the code of conduct. Please keep in mind that we're a compassionate, welcoming, and respectful community, and anything less will not be tolerated. If you're experiencing an issue, let us know, let me know, and it will be taken care of. We have zero tolerance policy. My name is Kerem Asfuroglu. I am the founder of Dark Source, which is a light and design practice driven by social and environmental values, based in London. Throughout my career, I've been very lucky to work with communities of various scales and kinds, and which has enriched my outlook and approach towards this issue as well. For example, I just came back from Newport, which is an amazing community on the west coast of Ireland. We were just talking about that. They've done an amazing job pushing boundaries at every frontier. And achieved results, went above and beyond and brought so much attraction and recognition to this issue. Their contributions to this topic has been, really substantial. And what I find very interesting with them is how they keep educating people, because this is also about communication. We know what or light pollution does to us, what it deprives us of, but it needs to be communicated to a broader audience to attract more people. I've been lucky to work with, communities maybe in North Wales, and they've developed these really amazing ways of approaching to issues, finding grants and funding to bring it to the other people. They target like serious light offenders within the area and say, look, here are some products. Would you mind basically installing these? And here are the reasons why you could do it, and incentivizing people to be a part of that. On the other hand, I've worked with a community in the mid part of Ireland once that they had no light whatsoever, but as part of their deal with the county council, they had to provide lighting. So a very small chunk of what I do is design. A large chunk of what I do is mediation, diplomacy, and talking, bringing partners together, communicating to one side why we are going to go with as low levels as possible with lighting, and then communicating how we're actually going to find a middle ground between those two. Communication is an essential part of this, and goodwill goes a long way, and we all know that. And before I get too further deep into the subject, I'd like to introduce our speakers. I'll allow them to introduce themselves. So we have Lya Shaffer Osborn, which we will start with in a second. We have Wayne Gosnell, and we have Steve Evers with us. I'll just let Lya take it away and introduce herself and give us a bit more idea about what she does.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lya, calling tonight from Seattle, Washington. What a pleasure to be here speaking with you all and knowing that everyone here is just deeply aware of how light impacts us, impacts our communities, and impacts the natural environment we live in. I am one of the co-founders of lightjustice.org. Which started with two colleagues of mine, Mark and Edward. We're all lighting designers. So we work with light from, like Kerem, we understand how light technology is applied. And, the tradition is we look at how it's, how it impacts the end user, the client. There's been a growing understanding in the lighting design industry of how impact goes beyond simply the space or the external space that lighting is used in, but it impacts human health. It impacts the health of the environment. It also impacts the health of our communities. It impacts the way that we can interact with each other. It also is, lighting is it can be very symbolic, right? It makes us feel things. We know that, being able to enjoy a dark sky, to see the natural light at night gives us powerful emotions. And that's, so it's really meaningful to have access to that. And similarly, light is a powerful symbol. And lighting technology and light justice, we've been trying to call attention to how historically it has sometimes been misapplied or misused, and sometimes even used as a tool of oppression. So just a little bit of background, some of the research that we've been doing in light justice, again, starting in the lighting industry, but also starting to try to offer these resources and this understanding outside of the lighting community as well, so that people know how to advocate for themselves and for their neighborhoods and spaces. We've been looking at infrastructural racism and sort of historic inequities and how resources are distributed across communities, and looking at how light either adds to that inequity or how we can apply lighting in a way that addresses these inequities. There's a political scientist, Isabella Cretura, who wrote in an article called Public Lighting and the Urban Wealth Gap. She says, light's ability to characterize space as either unappealing or appealing furthers divisions that already exist between rich and poor. And another quote I'd like to bring to you all tonight is from Celeste Henry of UT Austin. She says, many practices of illumination framed by notions of social progress are complicit, if not actively participating, in a devitalizing racialization of space. Indeed, in the US, the urban poor, the Black and the brown, corralled in the inner city by processes of white flight and racial criminalization, have suffered under this trajectory of illumination. Collectively, we appear to be creating a humanity that is slowly cut off from its connection to the wild, to the sensory and cyclical, to the cosmic, and finally to each other. And I felt like this really resonates with what we've been talking about so far today, and what I'm sure all of us have been thinking about in advance of this conference. How is it that we can, engage not only with our immediate communities, but with each other as advocates in a way that reconnects us to the wild, reconnects us to the sensory, to the cyclical, and to each other? And how can we form these bonds? And as Kerem mentioned, this trust, the sense of we are working towards the same spaces that serve us and that connect us back to the natural world. So I know we have very limited time, so I'm going to just wrap this up really quick because I know we have so much rich dialogue coming up. But just wanted to mention that from a community perspective, one thing that we've been very heartened to see in the lighting community, as in Light Justice, we've sort of been connecting people in the industry who are talking about this, whether they're manufacturers or lighting designers or even lighting reps. There is this sense of these resources can be allocated better. There are folks like Wayne and Steve working to apply the technology, more thoughtfully in spaces making these tools and ideas more accessible to folks, make these decisions a little easier, you know, either at the individual level or the community level. I've shared a couple links with Betty Maya. I'm really hoping that you all invite yourselves over to lightjustice.org later. There's some really encouraging case studies of lighting projects that really engage with community, that make sure that not only is the community engaged in the full process, understanding what kind of light serves them, how it's impacting, you know, the natural context, but really centers them as decision makers from start to end. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lya. And Wayne? You're mute, Wayne.
Okay, is that better? Okay, I'm an old guy. This technology gets to me. My name is Wayne Gosnell. I live in Blanco, Texas. It's a little town of 2,000 people. We're out west of Austin, north of San Antonio in the Texas Hill Country. It's very rural here. We still have a pretty good dark sky, although it is being threatened by 4 million people that are within an hour's drive of us. I got involved in this, I don't know, back in 2006 or so. And we got I went to a seminar that talked about night sky preservation, and I never even thought about that. So we got a SQM meter, a sky quality meter, to start taking, it's like the opposite of a light meter. It measures darkness of the night sky. And so we said, if we can't measure it, then we will never know if we're making progress or not. So we established a baseline back then. And then I kept getting jobs overseas. So nothing really happened in our local community until we came back. And in 2018, we formed in US terms, it's a 501c3. That means it's a nonprofit organization. Nonprofit means you don't have to pay taxes, and you can accept donations, and people can write that off of their federal income tax. So we formed that, and we have a really good group of advocates that are really stressing that. And one thing that we've done is we build a brand. I think Kerem mentioned that you gotta make it so that the night sky preservation rises to the level of attention of the population in general. And so we've done things like we have a logo, and we've made our signs like this. There's our membership signs. We have people buy those and post them all over the county. We say that's the best advertisement the night sky can have, because when they see that, they know that night sky is important to that person that has posted that sign. We have little giveaways here. People take these to the grocery store, and other people see it, night sky, and so it gets night sky preservation on their minds. We have little hats. We have shirts like I got on right here. Bottom line is our goal is to have this logo so that if when anyone sees it, they automatically say, "Oh, the night sky. That's important to preserve," and that's sort of what we have done. We have our motto is education before legislation, although we do have legislation also that we can call into play. We stole IDA's saying that they say we're after dark skies, not dark ground. People can have as much light as they want to, as long as it is good light, directed light where it should be. I'm speaking to the choir here. One of our thrusts is to educate young people. The young people are the future of tomorrow. We do a lot of work in the schools. We have a standard PowerPoint presentation that we give to people. We do information booths at community organizations. We have a essay contest at the high schools. We have a night sky art contest that we do at the elementary schools. We have a songwriting contest where we get some adults that can write good Texas songs, and they write songs about the night sky. And then we put them up on our website. In one case, we made an animated cartoon of one of the night skies. It was about city people that move out here to the country and immediately light up their houses just like they would be in a suburb. And that's not what we want. So it's a matter of education. We have a business recognition program. I can talk about that later. And then we do a light bulb exchange program. So that's sort of what we're about.
That's amazing. You know, you mentioned something that I was hoping to talk about is a community might be very hardworking in, like, you know, in terms of doing whatever they can to achieve dark skies, but they might be right next to a really seriously light polluted town or a city. And most of the time I have to break the bad news to, for example, London community is coming up to me saying, like, you know, guys, you need to understand that you're in a very, very light polluted city. Even if you're miles away from it, like, you know, it's still a challenge. And that's the unjust element of light pollution, that what it deprives us of, even if it was not our own doing. And the business, you know, recognition program, or the stickers, Newport, Georgia, and Macmillan, they do that as well, which works really effectively because it gives a sense of ownership over the dark skies. That commitment comes from the businesses, and dark skies become their pride and joy as well, which I find fascinating. So I'll just now leave it to Steve to talk about what he does, and then we'll go for a round of questions. Steve?
Great. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. My name is Steve Evers. I'm the executive director for the Friends of Arches and Canyonlands Parks. We are a small nonprofit. We're an official philanthropic partner of the Park Service in the Southeastern Utah group here in the US. So we essentially support and raise funds for programs and projects in arches, Canyonlands National Parks, and then also Hovenweep and Natural Bridges National Monument. And fun little fact is Natural Bridges National Monument, just south of Moab here, was the first designated dark sky, I think even area. Cut me a little slack. I'm not even 4 months into my job. And so really what I'm going to be talking about and the perspective I have here is one of, you know, of the organization and observing what has transpired in the work we've done specifically with dark skies over the course of the past 5 years or so. So I take zero credit for anything I'm going to talk about. And again, I've been a bit of an observer to this. Why our organization, the Friends of Arches and Canyonlands Parks, has gotten involved with dark skies is our mission is intimately linked to the parks here. Most of our parks, with the exception being Arches National Parks, they are very remote. If you're not familiar with the landscape or the geography of where I'm talking about, southern Utah is very sparsely populated. In fact, our neighboring county is about the size of New Jersey, which is, you know, it's a sizable state. It's not a large state in the U.S. Very few people, you know, less than 10,000 people over that span. So there's really no issue of those parks being impacted by bad lighting, with the exception of Arches. Moab has been seeing pretty aggressive growth, albeit we're a small town. You know, think about 8,000 people in the immediate area. But with this increased development, there's a real worry that Arches National Park, having been pretty recently designated a dark sky park back in 2019, there's worry that, well, if this town keeps growing, it could impact the park, and then, you know, we know the implications with that. And so our organization, along with the community, many stakeholders, we morphed kind of a program of ours into what we call the Moab Dark Skies. And so we were one of the stakeholders in the conversation to start to create some dark sky ordinances. So some regulation policy at the government level for both Moab City and then also Grand County, which is the county in which Moab is located. There's so many people that have been involved with this, and so I'm not pretending that our organization was the sole contributor to this. And we saw that essentially we have a pretty big and recognizable name. Arches and Canyonlands Parks are internationally known parks. And so being a fundraising group primarily, that means that we can extend our funnel to bring in cash to help programs like this. And I think, let's see, I'm looking at time. I don't want to take too long here. We do have some programs essentially that can help folks get reimbursed for lighting retrofits, because we see things where, okay, the local government is saying we're going to institute this policy where lighting needs to become dark sky compliant. Well, we're here to say, well, we've got a little bit of cash for this, especially for those that are lower income. This can help you out. And then for anyone else as well, there's, stipends available that are just a little bit less than what someone with a greater financial need could use. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. There might be some questions later on this. So I think I'll wrap it up there. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Steve. I have no doubts there'll be lots of questions coming that way. It's fascinating. I mean, if there's not any, I'll be asking questions about the reimbursement scheme and getting people involved, which is a very important part. Coming back to Lya, and light justice is such an amazing movement. And I remember seeing Edward speak back then, 2008 or 2009. I was a snotty little junior lighting designer. I was still a student, and he was talking about that stuff even back then. So his narrative, it's not that these themes are unimportant. They're a bit more prominent because now there are more people paying attention to it. And the inequality in the distribution of light and darkness has been a now well-recognized issue, whether it's a densely populated urban area or a small country, rural town. We've seen some papers, like people like Daniel Mendoza has been speaking about that, which is amazing. I wish somebody else did it for London as well, because it's a very prominent theme I see here. Darkness appears to be a quality where the wealthiest areas can afford to have. Because they're, for various other reasons. I'm not gonna, speculate on that. But what's really interesting is this community movement thing starts with the individual itself, him or herself. How that person comes into the, to this sphere, this realm is a very interesting question. So when someone decides that they want to begin taking action in their own community, whether as someone who has background in lighting or a community advocate, how do they figure out where to start?
I appreciate that question, because I just moved to Seattle during the pandemic in 2020 with my spouse and toddler. And I was in that strange position of, moving to a new city, not feeling like I could really connect to the community here, and wondering, as a designer and as a lighting designer specifically, how was I going to contribute to this new community that I found myself in? And, there was so much isolation at the time. I felt very lonely also as a designer who was trying to break out of the traditional mold of, you design where the budget is. And so I was asking myself that question: where do I begin? And for me, that ended up looking like just looking around in the community, getting to know local organizations that are using space that need some sort of support, that either need an advocate who can help them identify maybe existing issues, who could maybe identify their needs and help them articulate it so that they could apply for a grant, for a budget to address it. And then sort of went from there. It takes, as in your work, it takes communication. It takes reaching out to folks. It takes, just watching and listening, hearing what people are going through. So I would encourage, anyone here who, is really motivated to start finding where problem-solving energy and where creative, organizing energy is needed. Just start by observing what's needed in your community. Look for bad lighting. I feel like, you get more tuned to what is not dark sky friendly, what is not human friendly. Just notice it. And then when you notice it, ask yourself, who is this impacting? Why hasn't it been changed? Why isn't it better already? And who might I talk to? And begin by you know, just begin there, get curious, and know that, you know, if it hasn't been changed yet, that doesn't mean it can't be improved. And there are definitely, as you said, there's more momentum, there's more dialogue right now. And I think there's more an awareness that bad lighting, you know, it needs to be addressed.
Absolutely. And look, there are so many questions for you in the chat box. For folks who, if we don't get to cover, your questions to Let Justice, you'll be shared links and you'll have direct contact to Lya, but we'll get back to that in a second. Going to Wayne. So Wayne, you mentioned that you live in a small rural community in the Texas Hill Country. That is experiencing like an influx of new developments, people coming in and out. And how do you protect the night sky from people who may not have any appreciation for it at all, or who are not really, aware of this issue?
That's a very good question, and it's a very big problem, because I have literally met people who have never seen the Milky Way because they have spent their entire lives in the city, and once they see it, wow! And it's sort of like Lya said, it's a matter of educating them. Once you get it in their minds what a bad light is and why it's bad, they can't unsee it. Every light they see, they say, "Oh, that's bad. That needs to be corrected," and that's what we build on. But then we do other things like city people will come out and they're scared of snakes. Okay, we get some snakes here in the Texas Hill Country, and we say, well, let's think about it now. That light you've got out there, what does lights attract? Well, they attract bugs and flies and things. Well, what do bugs and flies attract? Well, they attract toads and frogs. And well, what do toads and frogs attract? Well, snakes. So that light you have outside is attracting snakes. Oh, yeah, maybe it is. And so now we've established a dialogue. So what can we do about it? Well, yeah, you can take that light and put it on a motion detector so that you still have lights when you need them, but when you don't have lights, it's not attracting any critters out there that you don't want. So it's that kind of engagement that we have them. Plus the general level of raising to the level of consciousness, what we're talking about. One thing that we do, we've created a night sky friendly business recognition program, where we go around and we look at the outdoor lighting that is on businesses. And there's a lot of businesses that have good lighting. Yeah, you don't need to knock them. Well, let's recognize them for their good lighting, and that we do. We give them a little sticker they put in their window. We make a little presentation for them, with a little gold sticker on here. We get this signed by the Chamber of Commerce, so it recognizes the business. And then we always make sure that we take a picture of them or have a reporter there to give them publicity in our little local paper that they're a night sky friendly business. And so all of those things help us raise to the level of consciousness the idea of night sky preservation.
Thank you very much, Wayne. Wayne has a really beautiful display behind them, which we'll come back to in a second, to communicate to to people what light pollution is. So he's got like light bulbs installed in the board. We'll come back to that, but it's fascinating because I've seen the similar thing done by other communities as well. Because sometimes we get really lost in our we get tunnel visioned into what we do, and we forget that it needs to be communicated to average folk and make them understand what this is about, because sometimes getting too specialized means that we get also a bit too derailed from what it should mean for the wider audience. So coming back to Steve, what has been one of the most important steps for getting dark sky policy enacted in local government? Because this is one of the most challenging things to achieve and do, and it'd be great if you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, so speaking from the experience that I observed here in Moab, we had essentially, you've got to find a champion, someone that cares. And I don't know comparatively if we had it easy or if we were lucky. We had at Moab City, we had a council member who was really gung-ho about this. And I don't honestly know how much education needed to happen with this individual. I have an inkling that not much. Moab tends to draw a very, outdoorsy crowd. There's a lot of, science-minded folks out here, a lot of people that are connected with the parks and other land management agencies at all level, from local, state, up to federal. But what I noticed was really what mattered most, is having that little champion who, honestly, let's face it, had power. And as a council member, they're in their behind the scene meetings, and that's where a lot of this stuff happened to begin with, where we got working groups going. And to clarify, I think behind the scenes meetings, sometimes it has a negative connotation. This is all public domain stuff, and we had a lot of stakeholders from the community there. The way that, I think, to expand a little bit further on this, the way our local government work is, we have a legislative branch and a judicial branch. And the legislative branch, they have their elected set of commissioners, but then they also have an appointed body that is the planning commission. And so these are volunteers that help just kind of push things along and kind of do a little bit of the heavy lift before these sometimes overburdened commission members can get to them, or before things make it into public meetings. That would be another example of a great place to kind of start getting in somebody's ear, take them out, get them to understand and to feel, because nobody is going to do a darn thing about anything unless they care about it. And so they need to experience it. They need to connect with it, ultimately to build that connection, so they can champion and get things pushed through.
Thank you very much. Well, we're doing well with the time. We have 13 minutes, which we will use very efficiently now. So before we go back to some questions, there's a comment that came from the audience saying, define bad light. And sometimes we forget to explain these things in very basic. The text definition of bad light is basically light that is cool or neutral in terms of color temperature. So warmer the better. Use warm color temperature. Use the amount of light where you need it at the time you need it. So bad lighting is any light that goes in any direction but downwards. It needs to go down and stay down, as Wayne beautifully explained. This is not only about dark skies, it's dark landscapes as well. And just switch it off when you don't need it. So bad lighting is basically light that is not needed and going in the direction that it's not supposed to be. And it's as simple as that. So Lya, there are so many questions for you, but I'll be able to just post some of them. One came from Debbie. Is the light justice movement willing to consider a national lighting education program for the police through the major cities Chiefs Association? She's also made some remarks about the higher incidences of pancreatic and other forms of cancers in bright areas as well, which is something that we're coming to know as well. But if you could just briefly elaborate on that, that'd be great.
Absolutely. It's a great question. So I don't know how many of you are aware of the Omnipresence program in New York City. It's where the NYPD, after the end of stop and frisk, was looking for tools to reduce crime in neighborhoods, and ended up installing, unfortunately, gas generator powered, basically like floodlights. And there's been a lot of community backlash to that. I mean, there's just one really egregious example of misapplied lighting. And unfortunately, it's one of those cases where the Band-Aid has sort of become permanent, and it's hard to undo sometimes when something has become the status quo. So this is to say that in the backlash against that, there has been this conversation around, like, how do we educate folks who are trying to use light in a helpful way, but end up not using it in a helpful way? How do we offer this education? How do we offer this understanding of lighting, of what good lighting is, what thoughtful lighting is that does serve a community, that not only aids in the reduction of crime, for instance, because that is a significant concern, but also increases the health of the community overall, rather than addressing only one small issue and sort of negatively impacting others. So the International Organization of police chiefs, actually, that's we're aware of them, and we are chatting with other folks in the lighting design industry, who have connections to municipalities, who have this broader network. We're working on ways to offer this expertise in a way that is accessible to them. And I'm hopeful. I would say we're only a year in almost to having lightjustice.org available. So there's a lot of work still to do, and really appreciate folks like you bringing this up, because this is where the communication will have to continue.
And you can tell from the reactions of people, it was such a much needed movement that it resonates with people. Again, for everybody who has more questions for Lya, we should be able to get back to you after this session. Wish we had all the time in the world. We could just go on for 3 hours if you had the time. Wayne, I got one question for you. Let me just find that. Sorry about that. Yeah. This is from Norman, and he says, I love the idea of recognizing community as part of the efforts as well. I'm interested to know how this effort has influenced other individuals and businesses in the area. And whilst doing that, you could also give us a little demonstration, a quick one if you could, with the afterwards. Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
On our business recognition program, we recognize businesses, but it also is motivation for other businesses. We've had, since this has gone up, we've recognized about 30 businesses in our small town of about 2,000 people. That's a lot. So it's, jump on the bandwagon. These businesses are protecting the night sky. Can your business do it too? We've had businesses come to us and say, please come out and do an evaluation so we can become a night sky friendly business too. So it's jump on the bandwagon that catches on. Kerem, this is what, this is a demonstration that we do for various audiences. These are fixtures that go out on somebody's door stoop by their door to let them know. And we show people that the traditional incandescent bulb. What's wrong with it? Well, it scatters light everywhere. So we say, well, they told us we can't use those anymore because they're not very efficient. You got to go to these funny little squiggly bulbs. And so we turned that on. Oh, they don't like that because that light is the color temperature is too high. Well, what's color temperature? Let's just now talk about color temperature in addition to scattering the light. So we said, okay, well, then they told us we have to go to LED. So that's an LED. Well, what's wrong with that? Well, that's a good light because you can run that light for about 1/10 the cost that you can run one of these incandescent lights on. Well, that's good. Well, and better color temperature than that. Oh yeah, but what's wrong with it? Well, it still scatters light. So we show them this thing. Well, what's that? Well, that is one of these things. And this is a flat bottomed LED bulb. You get the efficiency on it and it shines down. You get better light shine down. Well, that takes us to, we have a program we call the light bulb exchange program. In essence, it's become a giveaway program. We buy these things. They cost us about $3 each. And we give them to people. Take this home, try it out. You can get these on Amazon for about $3. And oh, by the way, these are even better. This is LED, and you see that little nipple thing on the top? Well, this is a motion detector. So you can put this out on your light, and it's dark until you need it. And then when you go out, it lights up. A lot of people have security lights on their, shining out like these things. You see these all over. Well, this one has one of these little things. It's a motion detector. And so if you put that out there, you get light when you need it. And when you're not, it's dark. So we buy these and we give one to people and we say, this is what you need to have. Go forth and buy them yourself if you like them.
That was brilliant. Thank you very much. Steve, I got a question for you because I think it's fascinating that, people don't sometimes appreciate when they're going for a dark skies as a title, and for such a large area such as what you're working with or like dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Once they get the title, they have to also hold on to that title, and this is actually requires a lot of finesse and work to do, because I'm sure there are other plans of like what you mentioned with the reimbursement program, the outreach, and plus also internally the structure-wise, like, you know, making future-proofing plans. As you said, you just came on board and taking this operation over and getting yourself, like, you know, familiar with. So it is actually a very, you know, big effort that requires a lot of coordination. And what do you guys see in terms of the next couple of years, where you headed in terms of, like, you know, how much, you know, you can increase the potency of darkness or protect it in the upcoming years?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one I'm working on addressing right now. So this is, you know, the multi-year planning. We're actually doing our strategic plan as an organization for the next 3 years right now. So I don't have this totally defined, but it's certainly something that's on our radar. And currently for our Moab City and for Grand County, the timeline for individuals to come into compliance per these lighting ordinances, it's drawing near. I think it's the spring of 2024. And so we've revitalized efforts to meet with, we've got a new sustainability director hired at Moab City. And so I've been working with this individual a lot to come up with ways to, you know, first make sure that the city is entirely compliant, because, you know, as you're trying to lead, you know, the citizenry, and you know, if you have any inkling of, well, this is a top-down sort of approach, you know, you're kind of flirting with a fine line there. And so we want to make sure that you know, those perceived at the top or at the top, you know, the city, make sure they're compliant first. So we're finding ways to do that, continuing outreach and education. So we have another event to do, I think by the end of the year, at least in the spring. And so our organization is helping fund parts of that. Looking at other possible grants for large scale things. So Wayne, I might be connecting with you offline about the business program, because that's been another component, you know, like the Friends of you know, the Moab Dark Sky, or whatever, you know, whatever we want to call it, but instituting something similar to that, because, you know, our businesses are the ones that do have a, you know, a large impact with light. The individual residences, we've been helping out with this lighting retrofit reimbursement. Essentially, we were able to get some grant money from outside organization, or even some companies and individuals. And now we've got this pool of money that people can apply, and we can give them money to help encourage them, you know, change some exterior lighting. So we may be continuing that. It really just kind of depends on, you know, funding and you know, what we can do for that. And I think the response has been, it's been good. I wouldn't say it's been strong, because I think we need to just continue. You know, I think people heard, oh, I've got to come into compliance in 4 years' time, you know, when this was first passed. And they're like, yeah, I'll put that on the back burner. And now, as you know, we're increasing our efforts to get the word out there and let people know, hey, it's time to come compliant. We're seeing a bit stronger of a response. And literally, I just got this application live again like a week ago. It was on hiatus, as you know, as we were doing our director transition, and you know, the responses are already coming in. So yeah, there you have it.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you all. It's been really a fascinating talk. I could go on for hours. I wish we had the time. For everybody who had their questions unanswered, we'll get back to you on these. These will be fed back to the speakers, relevant speakers, and they'll strive to come back to you. There's been some really interesting questions. I wish we had the time to cover everything. You know, above all, thank you all our attendees and, you know, our listeners who joined into this session. I personally learned a lot from it. I'm enjoying that people are connecting with each other. That's the essence of this community. And thanks again for IDA facilitating this, bringing us together so we can actually learning each other's ways and, you know, striving to leap further than we can individually can. So we work as a group and community. So the next session will be exploring the dark skies movement across Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and India. Stay tuned. Thank you very much for joining us wherever you are in the world at the moment. It's actually 5:30 a.m. in London, and I hope we had a better time to tune in. It's been an absolute delight, and thank you all our speakers for being with us. It's been absolutely a pleasure chairing this panel. Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you, Kerem.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
Good job, Kerem. Kerem's gone. He did a good job moderating that.
Yeah, thank you, Wayne. That was great.
Okay, yeah, that was fun. I agree with him. We could talk about this all night.
I'm with you, Wayne.